Hello, welcome back. I'm Darren, and today we're just going to have a general talk. So, loads going on online. CPUs, big discussions on CPUs at the moment, and obvious why, because Intel have completely screwed themselves in the market. But whilst Intel self-destruct, somehow, beyond imagination, AMD jump in and say, hold my beer. How? I don't know who makes decisions at AMD, but oh my god, they need sacking. Because, we'll start with Intel. It can't be any worse for Intel, realistically. And I quite like Intel stuff. I've used Intel CPUs now for the last... let me think. When I came back to PC, I was 10600, 11600... No, 10600, 11600, 11700... 12, I don't know what 12s I had. 13th I'm at the moment. There's no point in me really going 14th. That kind of didn't really seem like much worth it. So I've had a lot of Intel in the house and I've been fine. Now, again, like I said, maybe it's just down to luck. I always do undervolt my Intel CPUs out of the gate. It's the first thing I do. I know that they've always run high voltage, especially just left to their own devices. So is it plug and play? No. Would I recommend someone like a high-end Intel CPU as a plug and play 21? No. That doesn't mean it's particularly something difficult. It literally takes me about 2 minutes and I'm done. But I know. So I kind of know what I'm doing to a degree, or I know enough to get me to where I need to be, where I'm not having issues. But as far as it goes, Intel's name, once you've got Steve, Gamers Nexus, once Steve's coming for you and Steve smells blood, you're fucked. I don't know what Intel... But at the same time, I've not watched his videos. I've seen he's put one up, and I haven't bothered to watch it as of yet, so I probably should. And I've seen that there's quite a lot of benchmarks up today on the new, or the... I can't remember what it is, whatever the AMD CPU that just got launched. 900X or whatever I think it's called. I think there's reviews up on that. I haven't watched those yet. That will be in this discussion, but I haven't seen the reviews, so I'm kind of guessing I know where that's going because I watched the hardware unboxed video the other day. But so yeah, obviously Intel, what's going on at Intel, not great. Bad for me, not necessarily. Bad for a lot of people, yes. Bad for image, terrible. And I don't really know where they go from there. And I kind of hope that it doesn't affect Battle Mage, because ideally Battle Mage is what I'm most excited about in the way of GPU launches coming up. Just because I just really want to check out Intel and see how it performs. So I'm kind of, NVIDIA will be NVIDIA, AMD will be AMD. I think realistically, probably the most exciting for probably most people, probably for a lot of the benchmark channels, will be Intel, just to see how they get on with their second generation release. So I'm kind of quite interested in that one myself. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, and I really hope what's going on with the CPUs doesn't interfere with that, although I fear it probably will, because I'm not sure if the shit getting thrown at Intel, which I'm not saying they don't deserve, I'm not sure how hard that's going to stick, and I'm not sure if they can recover. I've seen that there's obviously talk of a lot of people losing their jobs at Intel, which is never good. You never want to see that. So things aren't good for Intel. Now, I've seen a lot of response. There's a lot of people calling for Intel to do a recall. I believe Intel have responded in talking about adding extra period to the warranty. So they've added an extra 2 years to warranty. But I have seen a lot of comments, or I was listening to something yesterday, I can't remember who it was by. Might have been Daniel Owen, saying that there's a lot of talk on Reddit about people that are having their warranty claims kind of, what would be the word I'm looking for? They're basically being turned down. And it's causing a lot of issues. Those people are going very viral until Intel then suddenly realize that they're not going to get away with turning that certain person down and finding themselves having to back down, which is even fucking dumber than what they could be doing at the moment. So unfortunately, that doesn't leave Intel in a very good place. Did they need to do a recall? I don't think so, because it's not a problem that's going to affect every CPU, from what I understand. So if that's the case, from what I'm concerned, as long as they are willing to replace faulty without argument, then I'm not sure that a recall was particularly necessary. But people have different views on that, and that's fine. But whilst Intel are fucking scoring own goal after own goal, burning themselves, AMD somehow decide to come in with some CPU refreshes and lie blatantly in the benchmarks, which is such a fucking incredible thing to do. I don't know where that kind of... to be fair, you're not hearing a lot about it, which I'm actually really surprised. Because if that's fucking bad practice, trying to mislead people that otherwise may be no different. Now, to be fair, I think realistically, most places jumped on the bandwagon pretty easy, saying there is not a chance that those refreshed CPUs will be beating the claim, what AMD are claiming them to be able to beat. So that happened pretty quick, and for most people it was probably obvious. But what that decision was from from AMD to do that blows my mind. And they're in a position where they don't have to do that, which is why I find it such a strange decision to make. I mean, AMD are leading in the CPU market, and they have been leading in the CPU market for a very long time. To purposely bottleneck a GPU to give the appearance that your CPU is beating other CPUs, and then state that it is within the benchmarks without clarification of the reasons why it is beating the other CPUs, is a crazy decision to make. So I'm kind of gobsmacked why AMD would do something like that in the already position that they are in. There's just no reason for it. Absolutely no reason to go out and try and mislead the public with something like that. So that I find very strange. It's almost a case of what? Yeah, I don't get it. Intel are in deep enough shit, and they're causing themselves enough issues that all you have to do is sit back and just lap it up and just stay clean. Just stay clean. Just don't do anything stupid. Just take the business, laugh, say, haha, look, Intel are screwing themselves. We're already dominant as it is, and that's just going to make us more dominant. And then someone within that company decides that they will make up some benchmarks blatantly lying about how they are beating competitor products when they clearly are not beating competitor products. Very strange thing to do. But whilst we are on that situation, and this is So, no offense towards AMD people, but I need to ask AMD users, why do you appear more obsessed with ray tracing than NVIDIA users? But not only do you seem more obsessed with ray tracing over NVIDIA users, you seem more obsessed with Cyberpunk, which I find incredible. And the only reason I say that is because within probably the groups last night and then within YouTube today, I don't know why, I probably clicked on one video and then it just showed me video after video. But all I've seen in the last 24 hours is benchmarks by AMD on Cyberpunk with ray tracing, with titles claiming that NVIDIA people have stated that they can't do ray tracing, but they are beating NVIDIA at ray tracing. So I don't know where that comes from. I've not read it. So whichever NVIDIA owner said that your AMD can't do ray tracing, for one, just ignore, because it doesn't make sense to say it can't do ray tracing. It's not like, I don't know what NVIDIA owner would make it sound as if as soon as you click on ray tracing, your CPU, I don't know, what are they saying, it explodes or it just turns off? Or when you go to click on ray tracing, the options grayed out so it doesn't work? I'm not sure. I find that quite a strange thing to say. But apparently NVIDIA owners are telling them that their GPUs can't do ray tracing. They clearly can. I can turn on ray tracing in my GPU, but no one's ever come to me and said that it can't do it. But it seems overboard, obsessive. And then I was watching, I think I saw a video today, and I kind of thought it was a bit of a strange video because there was no context to it apart from a comment from the author saying that they were proving that the 7900 XTX could do ray tracing better than the 3080. So I kind of watched the video and I kind of thought, yeah, okay, strange flex, because you are talking about AMD's current generation flagship against what NVIDIA's last generation fourth most powerful, I think it was, last generation. Plus there's quite a bit of a difference in value. So like, strange thing to kind of make a comparison on. But at the same time, when I watched the video, it seemed like the author had only decided to go to a certain level of ray tracing and not the highest level of ray tracing available. And they were quite close to each other at the level of ray tracing that it was at. So I commented and said, okay, what level of ray tracing is that? Because if that's at the highest level of ray tracing, I can understand why people have said that the 3080 is faster, because if it's at path tracing, or I think maybe even ray tracing psycho, the benchmarks do lead to that. I didn't get the kindest reply. I'd obviously upset this guy, whatever it is. I don't really care. But I just thought it was strange. So I don't have a 3080, but I do have a 3080 Ti. So I might actually look into that, because I don't see the point in why you would purposely mislead people. It seems a strange thing to do. It seemed a strange flex in the first place to me. But at the same time, it seemed as if it's a case of, well, if you're going to just handpick settings to a certain point, because you know when you go slightly past those settings, it's going to change quite rapidly, then that's kind of misleading, if that makes sense. Because like, I was trying to explain this to someone on my channel, and I don't think they could get it. But when you're talking about GPU performance, and you're talking about ray tracing performance, I think it's very easy to get muddled up in what people are trying to say. So If I'm saying that NVIDIA has better ray tracing performance, I mean the performance from when or the performance loss, the calculation of the loss in performance that they would get when they enable ray tracing, compared to, say, what the AMD GPU would get when it was obviously ray tracing was enabled. Now, if the AMD GPU from this current generation is against a lesser GPU from NVIDIA in last generation, then you can bet your life that in this scenario, the XTX rasterization performance, so before RT was enabled, would be so far ahead of the 3080. I'm talking like probably definitely more than 20 FPS, maybe 30, maybe 40 FPS. I would imagine the XTX would be ahead just at 1440p, native ultra settings, no RT enabled. I would imagine it would be that far ahead. Now, if once RT is enabled, that gap diminishes to like 5 FPS between the both of them, then even though the XTX will still be ahead by 5 FPS, if it had the same level of ray tracing performance, it would still be ahead by 40 FPS. Both of them would have lost a huge amount of FPS. But if they both had the same ray tracing performance, then the loss would be the same. Whereas in this scenario, I don't think it was anyway. I think they ended up quite close. Whatever this guy had obviously, the ray tracing preset that he ended up with it set to, they ended up, I think, about 5 FPS between them. So I'm thinking, well, the XTX must have had a huge lead, because it's going to have a huge lead over a standard, I don't know if it was a 10 gig or a 12 gig 3080. It wasn't a 3080. It wasn't even a TI, so I don't think there's a huge difference between those either. But obviously I do have the TI, so I'm kind of probably going to have a look at that myself, just out of interest. Because I remember playing with the TI at 1440p, and I think I had, obviously not using path tracing, but I think I had ray tracing quite high. So I'm going to probably check that out, because it seems a strange thing. It seems a misleading thing, but it also seems almost borderline crazy why it seems that wherever I look, there's an abundance of AMD ray tracing Cyberpunk everywhere. And it's like, well, from a lot of the kickback that I see that goes towards NVIDIA people, it's constantly that the only game they have is Cyberpunk, and no one gives a fuck about Cyberpunk anymore. I don't know, because there's a fucking damn sight more AMD benchmarks on Cyberpunk than what there is NVIDIA at the moment if you look on YouTube. So do they care about Cyberpunk? Do they not care about Cyberpunk? I think Cyberpunk's a good game. I'll still play Cyberpunk. I think it's probably got one of the best storylines of probably most games available at the moment. So that's my thoughts on it. Just a kind of an interesting... I don't know if NVIDIA have dropped themselves in this shit lately. Intel have. AMD kind of have. Not badly. I mean, whatever AMD just did isn't at the same level as Intel, don't get me wrong. But yeah, just my interesting notes of what I've seen within the communities of bitching and fighting and fanboying. So yeah, that's kind of what I've noticed this week. Let me know in the comments. AMD users, do you care about ray tracing that much? Do you care about ray tracing more than NVIDIA users? If you do, can I ask why you bought AMD if ray tracing is that important to you? Like I said, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm not trying to... This isn't like a fanboying thing. It's not an arguing thing. I'm just really surprised. Like I said, I don't use... It's not that I don't use it. I'll turn it on in certain games, but I knew what I was buying when I bought my AMD GPU, and I certainly didn't buy it with the intent of I would be using it for ray tracing. Definitely not in Cyberpunk, and definitely not trying to force kind of heavy upscaling or whatever it was to do that, to then try and prove a point. So interesting. It got my interest today. I'll put it that way. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I will catch you in the next one.